Does that work? Is that any better? Tell me this is working. You can tell me this is working. Hopefully it is. I'm waiting for the first comments to come through to tell me that the sound has appeared. With a spot of luck, it has. On that basis, I'm going to chat just for a moment to see. Thank you, Harrison. Brilliant. All right, I was saying good morning. I am clearly not in my tree house in Auckland, and I am clearly freezing cold. But I'll give you a little bit more about that in a moment. So thank you for your patience, guys. I'll explain why, including the tech and the sound. Everything is different. But look, welcome, excuse me, welcome to Solid Ground, where I talk about all the issues of the day, the cultural, the political, the social, the conservative, the faith-based, all and everything, from a proudly conservative point of view here at Family First. And as I keep saying, it's a live show, so if you're tuning into this for the first time, know that you can put comments. You can put comments wherever this is being streamed, but know that you can also, know that if you're on the Family First Facebook page or its YouTube channel, your comments will come live to me here in the studio, which is why the likes of Harrison can say, now we can hear you, and it's on. And I see someone's noticing Food Dogs Trucking, there's an echo. There is, even I can hear it. So look, why and what is going on, before I get onto a couple of subjects of the day around homeschooling, and also around the What is a Woman bill. So Rachel and I have actually come to Queenstown. So this is where I am at the moment, actually in quite a cavernous room, which has got concrete floors, which means it's exceptionally echoey, which means for political playback tonight, I'm going to make sure I'm in a different room. But Rachel and I got here late last night. Lovely place to be at, but nothing works. We can't even get the heating to go, and it's about 0 degrees outside at the moment, which is why I am totally wrapped up. I am freezing. I am freezing cold. I am freezing cold. Rachel's still rightly in bed with, I think, 3 or 4 layers of blankets and duvets on. So I'm in Queenstown, so that is why it's echoey, because I'm in quite a concrete cavernous room at the moment. It's why the background is different. In fact, the sun is rising behind me. It's why everything is different. I've got a different camera. I had a different microphone. Everything is different, except the content. The content remains as good as ever. So look, there's a lot to talk about, guys, but I thought I'd start with something which I found was quite funny. Actually, no, I won't start with the funny stuff. I will actually Food Dogs Trucking, that's why it's still dark, yes. And it's about, as I say, 0 degrees outside, and it feels about the same inside. As I say, we have an array of heating options, supposedly, but not one of them works. It is quite funny, I have to say. But anyway, I'm going to get that all sorted today, so we can get everything sorted. All right. As I say, a live show. So as I'm talking, know that if you've got any thoughts or comments, particularly if you're on the Family First YouTube channel or Facebook page, put them on. Look, the big news is around homeschooling. So if you've been following, obviously, Solid Ground, Political Playback, and also Daybreak with Bob, you'll know, or actually on RCR, the platform, wherever, you'll know that the government, about a week ago, dropped a little bombshell on the homeschooling community. And that was it added amendments to an existing bill going before Parliament. Now, this bill had already gone through Select Committee. The public had already had their say. And then it had come back to the Parliament as a whole. It's called Committee of the Whole House. And that's where all the MPs are allowed to dissect the legislation clause by clause. And about a week ago, the Minister in charge, Erica Stanford, dropped a further amendment. And within that, it added clauses which put new reporting assessment requirements against homeschoolers. It also gave the Ministry of Education widespread power to make whatever other regulations it wanted. So anyone who's been listening to me knows, firstly, I don't like giving blank checks to bureaucrats to create regulations. The MP should be more specific. Secondly, the Minister didn't consult with the homeschooling community. And thirdly, the homeschoolers were saying, well, what is the problem? What is the problem they're trying to solve? And in many ways, Sue begins to sum it up, if I can get that here. She's saying the rhetoric that was being used is that homeschooling was weird and for weirdos. It was really horrendous and insulting, I have to say. And so all of a sudden, as the Minister and the Ministry of Education were under pressure to explain why they had dropped this amendment with no notice, explicitly saying, oh yeah, we know this will upset the homeschooling community, but we sort of don't care. They said, well, it's Gloria Vale. That was the excuse, it's Gloria Vale. We went and did assessments there, and it turns out every child there is failing. Well, a wonderful person called Cynthia Hancock, and I actually did an interview with her, and of course now I can't find it. Oh, here we go. Cynthia is actually the government liaison for the New Zealand homeschooling network. And so long and short, she said publicly, she was obviously with me here on Family Matters, she was with me on RCR, and so long and short, began to say, look, it can't be Gloria Vale, because only like a year or so ago they did assessments of the students there, and yep, some failed, some of the students and their families didn't reach the standards, but just about everybody else did. And so this whole excuse that it was about Gloria Vale began to fail. And so basically, after intense pressure, homeschoolers writing into the Minister, but importantly, and I think this is useful for all of us to know, writing to MPs, because my intel suggests that come Monday, Tuesday this week, MPs in all the parties, but certainly the government parties, so all three government parties initially supported this amendment. That's really important to understand. New Zealand First supported it, ACT supported it, National supported it. But with all the voices of people saying this is ridiculous, you should consult, and what's the problem? And by the way, you talked about Gloria Vale, but only a year ago you said it was fine, and now everything's a failure. There's a problem. And so credit to Minister Stanford yesterday, she pulled the plug. She has pulled those amendments and said, look, I'm listening to the feedback, I'm listening to families, we're not going to go ahead with this at this stage, we're going to go out and consult. So I actually think that's quite a big deal. First and foremost, it's a huge win for the homeschooling community. And I'd say it's a huge win for all of us who believe in not giving massive amounts of regulatory power to bureaucrats. You've heard me talk about this before. And let me put it really simply and crudely. In the past, MPs in a piece of law would spell out every bit of detail. There'll be these reports, they'll be this long, it'll ask these questions. Nowadays, the Parliament just says, we grant the power to the Ministry of the Environment, or the Ministry of Education, or the Ministry of Education's consultants to create regulations around, in this case, homeschooling, or regulations around adoption, or regulations around how to run prisons, not to the Ministry of Education, of course, to the Ministry of Justice, but you get the point. These pieces of legislation are now very light because they hand enormous powers over to the bureaucrats, faceless, unelected bureaucrats. And look, I had no faith when it came to the homeschooling situation. no faith that the bureaucrats would not actually try to stomp down on homeschoolers, as some people have said here. Some people view them, and I suspect within the Ministry of Education wants everyone in state school, doesn't like the idea that parents can be raising their own children, and they wouldn't like the fact that parents could be teaching values which don't accord with sort of the woke capture or the ideological captures in the state schools, and certainly in the Ministry of Education. So if you want to know more, go and listen to those recordings with Cynthia, either at Family First, which I think I would certainly recommend, seeing this is solid ground this morning, or you can also jump to RCR. But as I say, a big back down by the minister, but kudos to her, because actually it can be embarrassing. It can be embarrassing to a minister to have to step away from something they've put forward. And you can see already in the headlines, both the opposition and the media putting the boot in, oh, it's humiliating. I actually don't think it is. I think it's a sign that she knows she's made a mistake and is prepared to fix it. And so I actually want to give kudos actually to Erica for what she's done. As she says, she's listening to the feedback. And furthermore, she actually went out and spoke to them. She went out and spoke to the homeschoolers who were rallying outside of Parliament yesterday, along with, I think, David Seymour, Winston Peters at different times. But again, I think that's brilliant. That's what we actually expect of our political system, to admit when mistakes are made and to listen to feedback. But you will notice, and you'll hear more of us as Bob and I talk even more detail tonight, the political parties all jostling to say that, you know, we were the ones who made this happen. In many ways, they were the ones who made the problem happen in the first place. Never forget, the Cabinet is made up of New Zealand First, ACT and National MPs, and they voted to say yes to these amendments. I don't know whether they read them or not, but they voted them in. But they've also, all three of them, listened to the feedback. And it's gone. So I think that's a huge win. So we should celebrate that. And as I say, a big kudos to Cynthia there in the picture. She has been a huge and very important voice in this space. I'm going to switch topics now. You can see the light is changing outside, and so my camera is beginning to change things too. I haven't brought down all my kit from Auckland. That is far too substantial, so I'm relying on an old piece of kit at the moment. And as Lisa's saying, a win for democracy, it certainly is. Catherine's saying to encourage everyone to homeschool. I certainly would encourage that too. I mean, the 5 kids that Rachel's had, they've all gone through state and then some private schools. But if we had the chance again, I think we would do it by homeschooling. And yes, Food Dogs Trucking is out saying to Catherine, why is it all different? Yeah, Simon's freezing his little butt off here in Queenstown. He's in a place where the heating is not functional. It is freezing cold. It is really, I'm okay now in my jacket, but it's quite funny. Anyway, look, the other thing, of course, is the whole what is a woman debate is carrying on at the moment, not just here in New Zealand, but also in Australia. So I'm going to start there. I've got a couple of videos to share with you. One is just totally insane. It is Senator Michaelia Cash, she's the lady in white, talking to Australia's. Oh, Muddy Waters is saying he's in Winnipeg in Canada and it's a warmer here. Well, it probably is. Actually, it was quite lovely in Auckland when I left. Anyway, I'm jumping topics, as typical as me. Look, the next video is just showing the confusion around biological sex in Australia, but it's the same here in New Zealand. Where some politicians just get completely confused. And I want to show actually a video around Te Māori MP. I'm being told to hard enough around the cold, which is probably quite appropriate. Anyway, this is Dr. Anna Cody. She's Australia's Sex Discrimination Commissioner. She has been interrogated by a Senator, Michaelia Cash. So again, she's in white, the senator's in white, questioning Australia's Sex Discrimination Commissioner. Get a load of this.
Trans women, if someone is who applies for a job, for example,
yes,
and it is a trans woman and she may be asked whether or not she intends to have children, and if she replies, yes, I do, and then doesn't get the job because that employer doesn't want to employ women who may be of childbearing age, then she may have been subjected to unlawful discrimination on the basis of potential pregnancy.
I'm very confused. A biological male can't become pregnant.
But the grounds of pregnancy includes potential pregnancy as well as pregnancy.
But if they can't become pregnant, how can you then become potentially pregnant?
It's about the unlawful treatment by the employer. If someone is treated unfairly on the basis of pregnancy or potential pregnancy, then that is unlawful discrimination on the basis of pregnancy.
So if a bloke came in and they said, are you going to have children? Which is the same question really, and he said, oh, yeah, maybe. Are you saying that he could also claim that ground?
If he didn't receive the job because...
But they can't get pregnant?
No, not a man who is seeking a position, then it's not going to apply to a man.
Well, they're both biological men. It makes no sense. A biological man, you stated before, a biological man can't get pregnant. Am I correct? Because if I'm not, I've got to go back to school. I seriously do, because I missed that lesson in biology. I went to a convent school. The nuns may not have told me about it. But you said a biological man can't get pregnant.
That's correct, Senator. But someone who is a trans woman may be assumed to be pregnant or to be able to be pregnant.
So, as I'm seeing in the comments, this is why we need the law here in New Zealand. Now, granted, that's from Australia, but that's why we need the law here in New Zealand, because this is the absolute stupidity that is all through our institutions. Again, that's from Australia, but I have no doubt that if you talk to the Ministry of Women, we certainly know the Ministry of Health, where they talk about chest feeders and birthing people, the ideas of mothers and pregnant women have gone out the window. All of this, the wokery, is so deep and entrenched, and you heard it the other night in Parliament when they were debating, particularly from the opposition, unfortunately also from the Minister of Women, who was clearly uncomfortable talking about what a woman and a man is, but on the opposition side, this is the absurdity that we have, and you can begin to see why our systems break down when we're sending cervical smear tests to biological men, where biological women are receiving prostate cancer checks, where we're pretending that a man can become pregnant simply because he believes he's a woman. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of reason, and it's just totally absurd. And so this is why, when people are saying to you, why do we need this piece of legislation? We need this piece of legislation because it has got so out of hand and so absolutely stupid that people who are supposedly intelligent, because that sex discrimination commissioner has a doctorate, I'm not sure if she's a medical doctor or an academic doctor, but supposedly intelligent, sits there and makes up what is just complete BS. And that's what it is. They are just making stuff up. It is just lies. I mean, we've just got to keep coming back to that fundamental point. They are lying, and not out of ignorance, but out of direct disdain for reality. It's just nuts. So look, this is a good bill. I really encourage you to put in submission to the Select Committee. You would have got an email from Family First yesterday. If you're subscribed, or you haven't subscribed to Family First, you need to. I mean, obviously, first and foremost, jump onto our respective pages, like our Facebook page, like my page, subscribe on YouTube, but sign up to our emails and that as well, so that you know what's happening. So yesterday we sent out an email just giving the first suggestions around what you might want to put into a submission around this legislation, definitions of a woman and man amendment bill. Look, really importantly, it's good to have it in your own voice. Look, Bob and I can write suggestions. You can copy and paste some of it, but actually if you just copy and paste the whole lot, the committee dismisses it as what they call a form reply. Oh, it's just lots of the same. But take a steer from what we're suggesting, and obviously whatever's in your own mind, and then write to the committee and say it is important that we have biological distinctions. We've always had them. It's always just been accepted and given, but all of a sudden 5 minutes ago in human history, people who are supposedly intelligent have all of a sudden forgotten what is the difference between a man and a woman. So do that. You've got a few weeks, but get onto it in the coming days. It is King's birthday weekend, of course. We've got more time. Excuse me. But write a submission. Say why it's important that we have biological reality. Say why it's important that we don't lie and make things up. Say that it's important that society cannot stand if it's just purely based on belief, and if those beliefs go against empirical reality. Say that you actually want to stand up for women and girls, for your wives and your daughters, and you do not want to be compelled to play these silly little games, including having to use people's pronouns. Refuse, by the way, to ever play by that. People can use whatever pronouns they want on themselves, but if someone insists that you have to come up with a pronoun for them, tell them very politely to get stuffed. Kaz is asking, what happened to a tomboy? Yeah, well, actually, this is a good segue. Firstly, tomboys and whatever the equivalent of girls who would put on dresses and stuff, that's just being a kid, I would argue. It doesn't actually mean anything. Whereas today, all of a sudden, oh my God, if my son is dressing up in skirts and my girl is playing with fire trucks, all of a sudden, the sort of zeitgeist of the day, I would suggest, says, oh my God, this child is not actually a boy or a girl, we have to change them. Well, that's wrong on two levels. One, we don't need to change them. And secondly, we're playing into gender stereotypes. And actually, if you want a great discussion on that very point, amongst others, this podcast has just been dropped in the last 12 hours. So it's with Annie O'Brien. I know Annie from my political days. She is a fierce supporter of women's rights. She has no time for all of this trans nonsense. She herself speaks very strongly and clearly into the space, including around how gender stereotypes have flipped. So, certainly in my generation as we were growing up, you weren't to do gender stereotypes. I mean, not as a parent, I was just a kid growing up, but there weren't to be gender stereotypes. But if you notice now with the trans agenda, they're full of it. Oh no, a trans woman, so that's a biological man, the accentuated breasts and stockings and skirts and lipstick, it's all stereotypes. So anyway, check out that podcast, really, really good and important. The next one I want to show you is it's from a speech from the Te Pāti Māori MP, Orini Kaipara. And I want to show it to you, one, because it shows the absurdities of her arguments, but two, it's the wider issue, and I'm actually worried of what damage it does to tikanga in general. So you'll see how she's contradicting herself between two different speeches, and it's one of my contentions I've had, particularly with Te Pāti Māori, but it often goes across to the Greens and Labour as well. And look, I'm not Māori. My wife is. I'm no slug when it comes to tikanga. I learnt te reo Māori at university, so I'm not pretending to be anywhere near an expert, but I'm not completely ignorant. One of the things I note is that the left wing misuse tikanga all the time. And Māori activists are the same. They take the patrimony, the heritage that is tikanga Māori and te ao Māori, and they twist it and turn it to suit their agendas. And this is, I think, an excellent example of Orini here. So when she's speaking in green, when she's wearing green, that's when she was speaking on the What is a Woman bill. And when she's wearing red, this was an earlier interview when she just became an MP.
Māori, there is no differentiation of a man and a woman. It is tangata.
There is te mana o te tāne and te mana o te wahine.
One of the most prominent proverbs that we hear generation after generation hails from the far north by a queer. He aha te mea nui o tēnei ao. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. It doesn't say nor define a man or a woman.
Without the man, the female has no male voice, nor that male protection. And without the female, the male cannot enter a marae space or anywhere sacred where the female must be the leader in terms of the domain and the tikanga around that.
He wahine aho. I am a woman.
Wahine Māori are bred to become a caretaker, a kaitiaki of te ao wairua as well as te ao kiko kiko.
The architect of this bill does not speak for me, does not speak for Māori communities who safeguard our trans whānau.
Without women, there is no land, there is no whānau, and you lose whakapapa because we have the wombs that give birth to men and women.
Let me speak.
We are the caretakers of our wombs, which is te whare tangata.
Check your facts.
So not a complete total contradiction. Of course, in all cultures we have people, we have the sense of people, but we also define male and female. And anyone who knows anything, as Orini did before she gave that speech in Parliament recently, she knows Te Ao Māori is very much split down male-female lines. I mean, just look at Marae. She says it herself there, as I say, it's women who call the men into the sacred space of the marae, but it's the men who stand there to protect and guide and speak. I said, by and large, most iwi don't allow women to speak on the marae. So the idea that there is, as she tries to say, there's no sense of male and female in Māoridom is just, it's such a joke. So well done to whoever put that video together. I grabbed it off X. I just thought, again, it shows how people are quite prepared to lie or flip their views, depending on what the topic of the day is. Because I have no doubt if this was a bill on another topic, she would then jump back to a different view on tikanga. But it's important to say too that this, I think, and I say this as a New Zealander, I'm not, as I said at the start, Māori, but I'm sure this does damage to tikanga, because when ordinary people, and we're listening to it this morning, see someone who stands up and says, look, I am speaking on behalf of, and yet will at one moment say one thing, and then when it's a different context say something else, you go, oh, we can't really believe you. And you're actually quite prepared to twist and deform your culture to suit whatever the political needs are of the day. So I think that's just unfortunate, to put it really simply. But this is why, guys, and I'm going to start wrapping up here because I need to go and work out how to put the heating on. Please do look to submit on this bill. As I say, Family First put out an email yesterday. I'll make sure it's up on the website as well, to give you, it's suggestions of what to write. But many of you will just know it's the reality already. Societies need to be based on reality and observable reality. And males and females, we've known it all the time. And so speak to that. There's obviously improvements that need to be made to the bill. I better be clear, actually, as I wrap up. The bill is not perfect, and you wouldn't expect it to be of a member's bill. You wouldn't expect it to be of a member's bill. They actually have to do a bit more work on it. One of the big things they need to do is define what they mean by woman and female. Again, myself and Annie O'Brien talk about that in the podcast, because just, if you're going to put it into law, it's all got to be explained. Because if it just says, oh, woman, then a guy who says, well, I believe I'm a woman, still gets through. So you need to define what is a woman. And as I said, Andy and I talk about that early on. We talk about the intersex dynamic and why that's a complete nonsense when it comes to this debate. We talk about the motivations. Why is it that trans issues have all of a sudden become sort of the topic of the day? Why, after gay marriage, same-sex marriage has been approved, that all of a sudden there's been a pivot by some? And that's another reason why you need to listen to this podcast with any by some. It's jumped. And as I wrap up, remember, of course, tonight, 5 o'clock, I will find a better location for this. Oh, there's another. Terimu, thank you. Lovely to have you along. And thank you, everyone. There's just stuff firing through here this morning. But yeah, 5 o'clock, Bob and I are back. I'm going to find hopefully a better room in this place, which is less, echoey. And to make sure my camera and microphones are working. But I'm going to go out and have a little step outside after this. It is behind me. It's outside those windows. You might just be able to see some water. But mainly I've got to go and work out how to turn on the heating. So guys, have a wonderful day. Thank you for indulging with me today here on Solid Ground. I look forward to, I'll see you all again on Tuesday on Solid Ground. Remember, on Monday it's King's birthday, so there is no straight talk. We're not doing straight talk on Monday, but we have political playback tonight. Bob, of course, will be back on Friday morning with his daybreak. Monday there is no straight talk, but I am back Tuesday morning. Hey, always a pleasure, guys. Have a wonderful long weekend, and long live the King.